Do you ever wonder why that it seems like all day long all you feel is just stress? The weight of the world is on you and you don't feel like you can kick it? Well, in this video we're going to talk about why that is, at least one of the reasons why that is, and what to do and how to change your habits to be able to have a more fulfilled life and to be able to reach some of your goals. My name is Noah Gordon. The average high school dropout will make a maximum of $35,000 per year. I help coach those same high school dropouts to be able to double and triple their annual salary. That way they can live a more fulfilled and stress-free life. So why is it that it seems like you can never wake up or get on the right side of the bed, or it always just feels like the weight of the world is on you? When I was about 20, 19, somewhere in there, I started listening to a lot of talk radio going into work. And I was kind of trying to figure out my political standpoint, I guess you could say, in that time frame. I didn't really, I grew up in a conservative family, but 18, 19, 20 years old, you're really just trying to figure things out and didn't really lean one way or the other, liberal or conservative. I thought they were all just a bunch of idiots, to be honest. And so around 20 years old, I started listening to different viewpoints and different talk radios and listening to the news a lot. And that's about the time I really started getting sucked in, I guess you could say. There were multiple different talk radio stations that I would listen to, and I started, formulating a viewpoint after listening to both sides. And then after I started formulating a viewpoint of getting leaning more towards the conservative side of things, that's the rabbit hole I decided to go down. And so in the mornings, my morning routine was to grab breakfast, get a shower, grab breakfast, get in the car, and immediately turn on some type of talk radio to be able to go to work. And then throughout the day, I would check different news things, news broadcasts. I would talk to people about politics throughout the day. And what I noticed over time, and I guess I shouldn't say that I noticed it at that time frame, but I noticed it later on. And when I look back on that time frame, I guess you could say, I became more and more anxious. And the interesting thing about that is those are the time frames where I was trying to get ahead. I was trying to move forward, move my family forward. I got married when I was about 22 years old, I believe. And that was kind of my peak of listening to or being involved in what was going on in the world. And not just politically, but anything in general. Trying to keep myself up on the days or the world's events. The more I did that, the more I felt like I needed to continue to do that. Because there's something in you that has this sense or this urgency that if there's an emergency going on, I need to know about it. And the way our mind works is we will take and we will put something at the forefront if we think it's priority, and we'll put it at the forefront of our mind and say, this is what I need to focus on. And when you try and focus on something else, if your mind is constantly going back to that thing that you think is the priority, it's almost virtually impossible to focus on something else that is of value, to be honest. So like, as an analogy of that, think of like, your field's on fire. I remember catching my field on fire one time. And in that instant, it's such a priority, right? I was sitting there trying to put out the fire. The wind was kicking up and it was really picking up speed. And I got my wife out there and I'm just panicking. And the flames are going across the fence line. They're catching my neighbor's field on fire. It's an all-out, just something that's like completely engulfed your mind of this emergency. Now, if I were to have someone come to me and say, Noah, we've got this other thing that you need to focus on, this other thing you need to do, there's no way that I could take and I could say, oh yeah, you're right. This field being on fire is not an issue. I'll focus on what you've got going on. There's no way to be able to shift my focus on that. Now, the analogy of that is a little different because, correct, one is a priority, a literal priority of mine, because if I don't put the field out, my house burns down because the fire was actually fairly close to my house. And if I don't get the fire out, I burn my neighbor's property all the way down. So that is something that is literally my priority. But what is difficult and what we're sold on the news and what we're sold on talk radio is that someone else's forest fire, someone else's field fire is our priority. Now, if I'm going to drive down the road and I'm going to see somebody fighting a fire, then correct, I need to step out and I need to help and I need to address that thing. But if there's a fire in Uganda today, I can't help them. I can't do anything to be able to help them. It's not that I don't want to, but that is not my priority. It's the priority for the person who's driving down the road in Uganda to be able to see that and help their neighbor, but I can't do anything with it. And when I started realizing this, I started understanding that keeping up with that talk radio show or taking and listening to the news events of the day was changing the way I was operating for the rest of the day and my focus. I realized that if I think that this fire, using that as an analogy, if this fire in Uganda that this guy started and his field is on fire and his house is getting ready to be burned down, if I focus on that thing, then what I have as a priority, which is my family and the people around me, the people that God has put into my life, I can't take care of them. The problem is, in today's society, the news broadcasts and the talk radio shows, they sell it to us because it makes them money that this is our priority. So they say, well, you need to know about what is going on in today's political events. You need to be involved with this tsunami that happened a world, halfway across the world. Now, should you be involved in that tsunami? Should you go give to that tsunami? Are there things that you should do in the world? Absolutely. But there's this thing called paralysis by analysis. if you have so much on your plate that you're dealing with, you will not be able to deal with any of it. And that's where I was. I was listening to everyone's problems, and all I could hear was everyone else's problems. And you can't pick out a problem that you need to address. And then when you're listening to everybody else's problems, you're not going to be able to identify your own problems. Okay, so there's that. But then there's another side to it. Tell me, what is the proportion of what is on the news of good news or bad news? I'll wait. Clearly, everybody can say that most 90, 95, 99%, whatever you want to say, is bad news. Why? Well, bad news sells. Dramatic things sell. So, the tornado that rips through a town and puts 2 people, 4 people, 5 families homeless, that's going to sell, right? But then yet you've got somebody else over here who lost their job, five families over here, they lost their job and they went homeless. Well, which one are they going to put on the news? The one that was dramatic, the one that had a dramatic effect to get there, because the tornado ripping through the town was extreme and it was dramatic and it ripped up 5 people's homes. But yet you have the exact same result over here of 5 families that lost their jobs and they were homeless too. But they're not going to put that on the news until they put this one on the news first, because that sells. Our minds are gravitated towards things that are dramatic. So when you flip on that news station in the morning, you're catching, like, whatever percentage you want to put on it, you're catching most of the first thing you wake up to, whether that's your drive-in, whether that's kicking the TV on first thing in the morning, is you're getting infiltrated with negativity. There's a verse in the Bible that Jesus says to us. He says, think on things that are beautiful, just, and of good report. I struggled with that verse back when I was listening to a lot of news in my early 20s. Not even early 20s. This went on through most of my 20s. Because I listened to all this news and listened to these talk radio shows and said, well, but all these things are important. We need to listen to them. And it wasn't until I started shifting and I started understanding what Jesus was saying about that. It's not that he's saying that there aren't bad things out there. And he's not saying ignore the bad things. But he's saying that if you choose to think on things that are positive, you will be able to handle the fires. You will have the capacity to take on different challenges. If I wake up in the morning and the first thing that I put into my mind is the world's problems, for the rest of the day, that will weigh me down. It will weigh me down that I will not be able to operate at my capacity, at my efficiency, where I am designed to be. And I'm not just talking about the morning either. This is throughout the day. This is turning on the noon news. This is turning on the 5 o'clock news. There's something to see the news every once in a while. But, this comes up all the time, is moderation and balance. If you swing that pendulum to where the news is your God, to where that is what you are consumed by, then that will be what you're consumed by. You will be consumed by negativity. You will be a negative person. You will not be able to think on things that are beautiful, just, and of good report. When I started understanding this, it was really, really difficult for me to implement. Because I thought that, okay, I started thinking, this was about 30 years old when I changed my mindset on this. I started thinking, okay, maybe I shouldn't be listening to so much news. Maybe I should dial it back. So what does it look like if I just completely shut it off? Because I'm kind of of that nature. I'm either a kind of on or off type of fellow. I don't like to dip my toe in cold water. I either like to jump in or stay out. So I said, okay, told myself, what would it look like if I just shut it all off? And I kind of ran through some scenarios in my head. What's the worst case scenario? Well, worst case scenario would be, a bomb would be dropped on my home because I didn't know that there was an invasion of China or whatever nation would come in. And then I started thinking through that realistically. And I thought, okay, so if the tsunami on the other part of the world is not something I need to be focused on unless I'm going to go over there and help, which I'm not, because I'm trying to survive with my own family here. So if the tsunami is not the thing I'm going to go help with, or the earthquake, or the war, or whatever, so I'm just getting world events, then what are world events that could happen that are going to change my life? So you got, the stock market could crash. You got the country could be invaded. There's some very dramatic things that the news grabs onto. Okay, the news grabs onto it. It's not instantaneously, like everybody thinks, or I shouldn't say everybody thinks, but it's the way I used to think. Sometimes it takes hours, sometimes it takes days, sometimes it takes years, literally, before the news picks it up. Depends upon the story. So then I started thinking, okay, so if there's an invasion, this is where my mind went. It's kind of funny. If there's an invasion and planes are flying over, they're getting ready to drop a bomb on my house, and we need to take cover. Don't you think one of my friends would call me? Yeah, probably so. Don't you think that rumor would get around? Yeah, probably so. Don't you think you'd probably find out about that news before it was on the news? Huh, yeah, probably so. And so when you're at work, and the stock market crashes, don't you think somebody would come out to the plant and be like, hey, did you hear? Like, the economy just crashed. Huh. Yeah, probably right. Yeah, I'm probably not going to find that out as the first thing on the 5 o'clock news. And I'm probably not going to find that out on the first thing of the morning news. So, what does the news serve me? Nothing. It does not enrich my life. It does not help me to take my family from poverty, from a poor state of mind, into a wealthy or a place to where they are taken care of. It doesn't help me have a good mindset to come home to my kids, kick on the news, and look at all the terrible things and events, and it doesn't give me a good mood. It is not beautiful, just, and of good report. It's not. And once I was able to grab onto that, once I was able to figure that out, I just cut it off cold turkey. Around 30 years old, I'm 36 years old now, so it's been about 6 years before I have watched any regular news. Sure, I've watched a news program maybe 2, maybe 3 times a year since then, and at like somebody else's house, or you'll be at a mechanic shop and the news is on, or at a hotel and the news is on, or something like that. That happens. But what's funny is whenever I see that news now, I see a dramatic play, essentially. That's what it is. You've got news broadcasters that are all dressed up and slicked up and ready to sell you something. And what they're selling you is fear, and you feel like you have to listen to them because they are the authority. You know, they come on with the authoritative kind of command voice, and they have that authoritative music. Da 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 da. You know, it sounds official. It's all designed that way. And the thing is, you know, it can be fun if you see it as that. It's entertaining. But just see it as that. It's entertainment. If you are struggling and you're trying to get you and your family and the ones around you into a better place, if you allow yourself to keep doing the things you're doing, like listening to the news and being sucked into politics, you will never be able to get to the other side. You'll never be able to reach your goals correctly. You know, maybe I shouldn't say never, because I'm sure there's some people out there won the lottery and gotten there. But in a general sense, you've got to change the way you see the world. You've got to change your mindset in order to get to your goals. Somebody handing you a $100,000, $1 million check is not going to fix it. I hate to say it, but it's not. If you don't fix your mindset, that money will just run right out, and you'll be right back to where you started. It's happened to me before. Trust me. Someone, and this is true, but someone has helped me in my mid-20s significantly, and I squandered it. So I know if someone helps you out and you don't have that mindset changed, you will not be able to change the way you are in the future unless you change your mindset. So I think that wraps it up. Hopefully this helps you, and hopefully you see that other people's problems aren't necessarily your problems. You know, sometimes they can be if you can help them. But politics, you know, you're not going to be able to go down there, march down to the Congress, and change the way they are tomorrow. You know, you've got one vote, which is great. That's why we live in this good country that we live in, is because everybody's got one vote. But every 2 years, every 4 years, we've got to vote. Put that vote in the ballot box, and then live the rest of the next 2 years, 4 years, working on the things you're supposed to be working on. Not focused on this pie in the sky and Chicken Little mentality that the sky is falling, the sky is falling. No. Focus on your family and focus on the things that will move the needle forward. My name is Noah Gordon. Hopefully, you and I can change the next generation. We'll see you next time.